Today, in the matter of the people versus corruption, we reopen the indictment, if only to amend it and add 4 more accused and their accomplices. We call them the bean counters. They are supposed to watch hawkishly over the finances of public and private sector entities and ferret out even the slightest suggestion of irregular conduct, like you know who.
Please, don't you dare.
Yet, far from it, our accounting and audit professionals stand accused of, at best, being negligent and derelict in their performance of their duties, or, at worst, being complicit in corruption and fraud.
We submit that in the end, the Commission will need to determine whether any state capture, corruption or fraud that it finds to have taken place in the public sector was in any way facilitated by the auditors of state-owned enterprises. If it was, then the next question will be whether that facilitation was due to mere negligence, auditors simply not doing their jobs as they were supposed to, or something more sinister than that. Chair, we submit that even if it is only the former, even if state capture, corruption and fraud was not picked up by auditors of state-owned enterprises because of nothing more than their mere negligence, it is still important to expose that.
And the evidence against these professions is nothing short of an avalanche.
If you look at the corruption that's happening worldwide in the private sector also, it's actually because auditors turn a blind eye. There are endless accusations. Take the VBS case as well, Chairperson, of auditors turning a blind eye and getting paid to do so quietly by those who are doing the wrong things.
Ignore for a moment that Yunus Karim had framed himself so badly in that virtual session there, cutting off part of his chin and showing us the ceiling and lights behind him. But he's absolutely right. I mean, it's not for nothing that some amongst us a few years ago started interpreting the acronym KPMG as keeping promises made to Guptas. That reputation was hard-earned over many years. The international audit firm's bloodied fingerprints are all over that and other financial crime scenes. From failing to pick up and report irregularities at the Gupta company, Linkway Trading, yes, that one, the one that funded the Sun City wedding, to its lead partner in VBS, joining in the looting trough. And who can forget the company's dark deeds at SARS, including its infamous rogue unit report, used by former Commissioner Tom Moyane for his own nefarious ends at the revenue collector, only for KPMG to turn around and retract it, initially in part and now wholly. What about these guys? Their work formed the foundation of that now infamous euphemism for fraud and corruption, accounting irregularities. That's right, Deloitte auditors were supposedly the hawks watching over Steinhoff and Tongaat Hewlett for very long periods of time, including the period when accounting fraud on a mind-blowing scale occurred at both companies. Fat load of good that did those two companies and their investors. And its work at the African Bank when that institution nearly collapsed has also been called into question. For its part, PwC was the external auditor for SAA for a period of 5 years when a slew of dodgy contracts, supply chain violations and irregular expenditure was the order of the day, right under their supposedly sharp and trained hound noses.
When I was told that, I think from 2011, or is it 2010, 2011, 2012 financial year for SAA up to, I think, 2016, that throughout that period, the auditors who were doing the work gave SAA a clean bill of health. I said, but how could it be? In the light of what I was hearing, how is it possible that year in, year out for 4 years, 5 years, auditors could not find anything wrong, when on what I'm hearing, there were serious irregularities that were happening. How is it possible that they didn't pick these things up?
So a few factors seem to be at play here. First, the dominance of the so-called Big Four firms, issues of proximity and lack of independence between external auditors and internal audit committees at their client companies, and plainly a culture of silence that seems to have taken root that cripples new members of the profession into silence.
It becomes more lucrative once you become a partner, and to make partner, you guys have to play by the rules of the game. And if the rules of the game are you become complicit in looking away or perhaps being silent when you shouldn't be, then they do that because, again, you want to do well in your job or your industry. And sometimes doing well, as we've seen in these case studies, is actually being complicit in a lot of financial malfeasance.
This is no tangential, insignificant matter. Accounting and audit failures feed directly into a culture of fraud and corruption and a sense of impunity in the public and private sectors. How long before today's accounting irregularities turn into South Africa's own Enron? Moves are afoot to try and strengthen regulators' hands through new legislation. This can't happen fast enough, because until and unless we close this major front in the war on fraud and corruption, this is how we as society are drawing from the well of good governance and ethical financial management in the public and the private sectors. Welcome to today's Corruption Scorecard, Story Focus, Auditors and Accountants in the Mix.